Welcome to the Lost in Disclosure. Tonight, we dive into the deep water. Not as explorers, not as conquerors, but as listeners, standing at the edge of something vast, something ancient, something that breathes without lungs and watches without eyes. The ocean covers more than 70% of our planet's surface, yet we have mapped less than 5% of its depths. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the world beneath our waves. And in that darkness, in that crushing silence where sunlight dies and pressure becomes a physical weight upon the soul, there may be secrets we were never meant to find. This is not a story of certainty. It is a story of questions. Questions that echo through sonar pings and sailors' logs, through declassified reports and whispered accounts from men who spent their lives beneath the surface. It is a story that asks, what if the ocean is not just water and salt and ancient geology? What if it is something more, a resource, a sanctuary, a harvest ground for intelligences that do not call this world home? The waves roll, the tides pull, and somewhere, far below, something stirs. Let us begin.
Chapter 1. The Breath of the Deep. Imagine standing on the shore at twilight, when the sky bleeds purple and the ocean turns to ink. You watch the waves rise and fall, in a rhythm older than memory. It is easy in that moment to forget that the ocean is not a single thing. It is a living system, a planetary organ that regulates temperature, produces oxygen, drives weather patterns across continents. Scientists call it the lungs of the earth. Ancient peoples called it something else. The womb of all life, the first mother, the deep that dreams. There is a word for it in Japanese, yugen, a profound awareness of the universe that triggers feelings too deep and mysterious for words. To stand before the ocean is to feel yugen, to know that you are small, to sense that beneath the surface lies not emptiness, but presence. The ocean breathes, not metaphorically, literally. Through a process called thermohaline circulation, vast rivers of water flow through the depths, carrying oxygen, heat, and nutrients across the planet. Warm water rises, cold water sinks. The entire system moves in a slow, planetary inhale and exhale that takes 1,000 years to complete. One breath, one cycle, longer than empires, older than languages. But if the ocean breathes, what does it feel? This is not a scientific question. Or perhaps it is the only scientific question that matters. Because for all our instruments, all our satellites and submersibles and seafloor observatories, we have never truly understood the ocean. We have cataloged species and measured temperatures and charted currents, yes, but understanding, that is something else entirely. Understanding requires listening. And when we listen, truly listen, we hear things that do not fit into our models. We hear songs from creatures we have never seen. We detect electromagnetic pulses with no known source. We find formations on the seafloor that resemble geometry, architecture, intention. And sometimes, in the deepest trenches where pressure should make life impossible, we find thriving ecosystems clustered around volcanic vents. feeding on chemicals and heat in a way that defies everything we thought we knew about biology. Life, it seems, does not need sunlight. It needs only energy. And the ocean, we are learning, is full of energy, wild, untamed, and largely invisible to us. Energy that flows through hydrothermal systems, energy that pulses through magnetic fields, energy that some believe might attract attention from beyond our world. Because if you were a traveler from a distant star looking for resources on a water-covered planet, where would you look? Not at the crowded surface with its noisy cities and curious eyes. You would look below. You would look where the energy flows free and the darkness hides everything. You would look where no one is watching. The ocean breathes, and in that breath, perhaps, lies an invitation we have only just begun to hear. But the story doesn't begin with theory. It begins with mystery, with men and women who descended into the deep and came back changed, carrying stories that do not fit into official reports, stories of light that should not exist, of objects that move with impossible grace, of a presence ancient and aware that watches from the abyss. And so we must ask, what is down there? What has always been down there? And more importantly, what might be harvesting the ocean's secrets while we sleep unaware beneath a sky that holds no answers? The waves continue their rhythm. The tides pull and release. And somewhere in the cold black water, the breath of the deep stirs once more.
Chapter 2: The Silent Power Beneath. To understand what might draw visitors to our oceans, we must first understand what the ocean truly is. Not a passive body of water, but a dynamo of planetary force. A machine of unimaginable power, hidden beneath a surface that seems, from above, almost serene. Consider the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a volcanic mountain range that runs the length of the Atlantic Ocean, splitting the seafloor like a scar. Here, tectonic plates drift apart, and magma wells up from the Earth's mantle, creating new crust in a process that has continued for millions of years. The heat released by this process is staggering. A single hydrothermal vent can discharge water heated to over 700 degrees Fahrenheit, superheated by the planet's molten core, yet prevented from boiling by the immense pressure of the deep. This is energy on a scale that dwarfs our power plants. Clean, constant, and virtually limitless. And it exists in thousands of locations across the ocean floor, many of them unmapped, unmonitored, unknown. Scientists have long understood that these hydrothermal vents support unique ecosystems, colonies of tube worms, blind shrimp, and bacteria that metabolize sulfur instead of sunlight. But in recent decades, researchers have discovered something else: electromagnetic anomalies, strange fluctuations in the local magnetic field, pulses of energy that do not correlate with known geological activity. Some of these readings are subtle, others are not. In 2009, a deep-sea research team operating near the East Pacific Rise recorded a magnetic signature unlike anything in their database. It lasted for 17 minutes, fluctuating in a pattern that seemed almost rhythmic, almost deliberate. When the data was reviewed, one scientist noted, off the record, that the pattern resembled a series of pulses, like something drawing power intermittently, then stopping, then drawing again. The official explanation was volcanic activity, magma movement, natural processes, but the scientist, who requested anonymity, later said,
Natural processes don't start and stop like that. They build, they decay, they follow predictable curves. This was different. This was controlled. Could it be true? Could something be tapping into the Earth's geothermal energy, siphoning power from the planet's own veins? The idea sounds like science fiction, but consider this. If we, as a technological species, needed to establish a presence on a remote planet with abundant water and geothermal activity, where would we place our installations? Where would we draw our power? We would go to the heat. We would go to the energy. We would go where we could operate undetected, beneath a medium that scatters radar, absorbs sonar, and conceals almost everything from surface observation. We would go to the ocean floor. And perhaps someone already has. There is another form of power in the ocean, one less understood but equally profound: magnetic currents. The Earth's magnetic field, generated by the movement of molten iron in the outer core, interacts with seawater in complex ways. Ocean currents flowing through this magnetic field generate weak electrical currents, a phenomenon called magnetohydrodynamics. Most of this energy dissipates harmlessly, but in certain regions, where currents are strong and the seafloor is rich in conductive minerals, the effect intensifies. Submarines have long used these magnetic signatures for navigation, but in the 1980s, naval engineers began noticing something odd. In certain deep ocean zones, the magnetic field would spike unexpectedly, then return to normal. These spikes could not be explained by known oceanographic phenomena. They were localized, transient, and seemingly random. Or were they random? In a declassified report from 1987, a U.S. Navy geophysicist noted that several of these magnetic anomalies occurred near known hydrothermal vent fields. He proposed a hypothesis that some unknown geological process was creating temporary magnetic disturbances. But his report also included a single cryptic sentence: alternative explanations should be considered if pattern recurrence is confirmed. The report was filed away. The anomalies continued. What could cause such disturbances? Conventional science points to tectonic shifts, mineral deposits, or equipment malfunction. But there is another possibility, one that requires us to think beyond geology. If an advanced technology were operating near these energy-rich zones, drawing power, conducting research, or simply monitoring Earth's geothermal systems, it might leave exactly this kind of signature: brief, localized, repeating in areas of high energy density. We are left with a question that cannot be easily dismissed. Is the ocean floor merely a geological wonder, or is it also an energy reservoir being quietly, methodically harvested by intelligences we have yet to acknowledge? The evidence is circumstantial. The data is incomplete. But the pattern persists, like a signal we do not yet know how to decode. And deep below, where the Earth's fire meets the ocean's cold, the silent power continues to flow. Indifferent to our theories, immune to our skepticism, waiting for those with the means to harness it. Years later, another case would echo the same pattern. Chapter 3: Echoes in the Sonar. Sonar is the ocean's translator. It is how we see in a realm where light cannot reach. A pulse of sound is emitted, travels through water, bounces off objects, and returns, painting a picture in echoes. For decades, submarine crews and oceanographers have relied on this technology to navigate the deep. But sometimes, sonar reveals things that do not fit into any known category. Things that move, things that vanish, things that, according to the laws of physics as we understand them, should not exist. In 1968, a Soviet submarine operating in the North Atlantic detected an object on passive sonar. The contact was large, roughly the size of a small ship, and it was moving at a depth of 3,000 meters. This was unusual. No known submarine could operate safely at that depth. The object moved steadily, without variation in speed or course, for nearly an hour. Then, abruptly, it ascended not gradually, but in a sharp vertical climb, and disappeared from sonar range within seconds. The crew reported the encounter. The official record classified it as a biological contact, possibly a whale or a large school of fish. But whales do not move in perfectly straight lines for an hour, and they certainly do not accelerate vertically at speeds exceeding 100 knots. The incident was filed and forgotten. But it was not an isolated case. In 1972, the USS Tullabee, a nuclear-powered submarine conducting exercises off the coast of Puerto Rico, encountered a similar phenomenon. The sonar operator reported a contact moving at a depth of 4,000 meters, far below the operational limit of any human-made vessel. The object was tracked for 20 minutes, during which it maintained a constant depth and speed. Then, without warning, it executed a 90-degree turn and descended even deeper, beyond the range of the sonar system. The captain, a career officer with over 20 years of experience, later told a researcher, "I've tracked every class of submarine, every whale species, every oceanographic anomaly you can name. I've never seen anything move like that. It didn't accelerate. It just turned instantly, like physics didn't apply." Again, the official explanation was biological. A whale, a school of fish, instrument error. But the captain's report included sonar recordings, and those recordings told a different story. The return signal was metallic, hard, reflective, and geometrically precise. Not organic, not natural. Across the world, the mystery deepened. In 1977, Norwegian fishermen off the coast of Svalbard reported their sonar detecting multiple contacts moving in formation beneath their boat. The objects were large, fast, and traveling at a depth of 2,000 meters. The fishermen, thinking they had found a school of valuable fish, attempted to track the contacts. But within minutes, the objects accelerated and vanished, moving, according to their sonar log, at speeds approaching 200 knots. No fish moves at 200 knots. No submarine moves at 200 knots. In fact, the fastest torpedoes ever designed can barely exceed that speed, And they do so for only a few minutes before their fuel is exhausted. Yet these objects sustain such velocity for extended periods, maneuvering through the deep with ease. What were they? The phenomenon has a name among submariners: fast movers. Contacts that appear on sonar, exhibit incredible speed or maneuverability, and then vanish without explanation. Officially, they are dismissed as sonar artifacts, reflections, or biological anomalies. Unofficially, they are the subject of intense speculation, and in some circles, quiet dread. Because if these objects are not ours and they are not natural, then they are something else. Something that has mastered the ocean in ways we can only dream of. Something that moves through the crushing pressure and lightless void as easily as we move through air. In 1992, the U.S. Navy established the Integrated Undersea Surveillance System, a network of hydrophones positioned across the ocean floor designed to detect submarine activity during the Cold War. The system, known as SOSUS, recorded everything: whale songs, seismic activity, distant ship traffic, and occasionally, sounds that could not be explained. One such sound, recorded in 1997, became infamous. It was named bloop, an ultra-low frequency sound powerful enough to be detected by sensors over 5,000 kilometers apart. The frequency and profile of the sound were consistent with a living creature, but if so, it would have to be far larger than any known animal on Earth, larger than a blue whale, larger perhaps than anything biology can support. The official explanation, provided by NOAA years later, was an ice quake, the sound of ice fracturing and calving from Antarctic glaciers. But the original researchers were never fully convinced. The sound, they noted, had a rising and falling quality, almost like a vocalization, almost like a call. And yet, even that explanation leaves a shadow of doubt. Because bloop was not the only unidentified sound recorded by SOSUS. There were others. Julia, a sound resembling a conversation between enormous entities. Slow down, a descending tone that lasted for over 7 minutes. The whistle, a sharp, mechanical-sounding pulse that repeated at regular intervals for 3 days, then stopped forever. Some of these sounds have been explained. Others remain mysteries. But taken together, they paint a picture of an ocean far stranger than we imagine. An ocean where vast, unidentified objects move in silence, where sounds echo from sources we cannot locate, and where the line between natural and artificial becomes impossibly blurred. Sonar operators are trained to trust their instruments. They are trained to distinguish biological from mechanical, friendly from hostile, real from illusion. But when the sonar paints a picture of something that should not exist, What do you trust? The instrument which says the object is there, or the mind which says it cannot be? The echoes continue. The fast movers appear, then vanish. And somewhere in the deep trenches and abyssal plains, the ocean keeps its secrets, sealed beneath kilometers of water, beyond the reach of our eyes, detectable only in fleeting glimpses of sound. And perhaps, just perhaps, those echoes are trying to tell us something we are not yet ready to hear. From the depths below to the silence above, the question remains.
Chapter 4. The light that shouldn't be there. Light in the deep ocean is an impossibility. Below 1,000 meters, the sun's rays cannot penetrate. The world becomes a realm of absolute darkness, broken only by the bioluminescence of strange, alien creatures. Jellyfish that glow like stars, fish with lanterns of living light, bacteria that coat the sea floor in eerie phosphorescent carpets. But there is another kind of light, a light that does not come from biology, a light that moves with purpose, that rises from the depths, that has been witnessed by sailors and submariners for centuries, and that, in the mid-20th century, became the subject of intense, classified investigation. In 1963, during a NATO naval exercise in the Atlantic, multiple ships reported seeing luminous objects beneath the surface. The objects were described as large, circular, and glowing with a pale blue-white light. They moved in formation, pacing the ships for several hours, then descended rapidly and vanished. The sighting was recorded in the exercise log, but no official explanation was provided. One officer, interviewed years later, recalled, "It was like they were watching us. They kept pace, matched our speed, stayed just deep enough that we couldn't get a clear visual. Then, when the exercise ended, they just dropped, straight down, faster than anything I had ever seen." This was not an isolated incident. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, naval vessels operating in deep water regularly reported sightings of submerged lights. These were not flares, not bioluminescence, not reflections. They were structured, coherent sources of illumination, often witnessed by multiple crew members simultaneously. And in many cases, the lights did not stay submerged. They rose. In 1967, a U.S. Navy destroyer conducting anti-submarine warfare drills off the coast of Argentina observed a glowing object ascending from a depth of at least 2,000 meters. The object broke the surface, hovered for several seconds, then accelerated vertically into the night sky. The entire event was witnessed by over a dozen crew members and tracked on radar. The official report described the object as a flare or rocket, but flares do not rise from 2,000 meters underwater. Rockets are not launched from the ocean floor. And the radar signature, according to one technician, was unlike any known aircraft. It didn't move like a plane. It didn't move like a missile. It moved like gravity didn't matter. The report was classified. The crew were debriefed. And the incident, like so many others, was quietly shelved. But the witnesses did not forget.
One of the most compelling accounts comes from 1971, when the Argentine Navy ship Ara Aldemirante Storni encountered a series of luminous objects while patrolling near the Gulf of San Matias. The crew observed multiple glowing disks maneuvering beneath the surface, creating patterns of light that resembled a grid or matrix. The objects remained visible for over 2 hours, during which time they appeared to communicate, flashing in sequences, responding to each other's movements with coordinated precision. Then, one by one, the objects ascended. They emerged from the water, hovered briefly, and shot upward at impossible speeds, leaving trails of light that lingered in the darkness before fading. The captain filed a detailed report. Sketches were made, testimonies were recorded, and the Argentine Navy, to its credit, did not dismiss the sighting. Instead, it launched an investigation. The conclusion, published internally but never widely released, acknowledged that the objects were of unknown origin and exhibited capabilities inconsistent with known technology. In other words, they were real. They were there. And no one knew what they were. This phenomenon, glowing objects rising from the ocean and disappearing into the sky, has been reported across the globe, off the coast of Japan, in the Mediterranean, near the Canary Islands, in the Pacific along the so-called Dragon's Triangle, a region infamous for disappearances and strange encounters. The pattern is always the same. Lights beneath the water, sometimes stationary, sometimes moving. Then, without warning, they rise. They break the surface. They ascend into the sky. And they vanish, leaving only questions and the lingering sense that something vast and inexplicable is operating in the liminal space between sea and sky. What are these lights? What could they possibly be doing? One theory, proposed by researchers studying unidentified submerged objects, USOs, is that the ocean serves as a refuge or operation base for intelligences not of this earth. If such beings exist, and if they require resources, energy, minerals, water itself, then the ocean is the ideal location. It offers concealment, abundant materials, and an environment that is hostile to human observation. The lights in this framework could be vehicles, craft designed to move seamlessly between water and air, harvesting resources from the ocean and transporting them elsewhere. The bioluminescent glow might be a byproduct of propulsion, or perhaps a form of illumination adapted to the deep sea environment. It sounds fantastical, but consider the alternative explanations. Bioluminescence? Not at the scale and intensity described. Natural phenomena? Not capable of coordinated movement or rapid ascent into the sky. Human technology? No known vehicle can operate at such depths and then transition instantly to flight. We are left with the mystery that refuses to resolve. A mystery witnessed by trained observers, recorded in official logs, and yet dismissed over and over as misidentification, hallucination, or hoax. But the lights continue to appear, and those who have seen them carry a certainty that no amount of skepticism can erase. One retired naval officer, speaking on the condition of anonymity, put it this way: "You can call it whatever you want. A natural phenomenon, a secret project, mass delusion. But I was there. I saw it. And I'll tell you this, whatever it was, it knew we were watching. It knew. The ocean, we are told, is empty, lifeless below a certain depth, incapable of sustaining anything beyond microbes and the occasional blind fish. But the lights tell a different story. They tell of presence, of intelligence, of purpose, and perhaps of harvest. If these objects are indeed extracting something from the ocean, energy, rare elements, or something we cannot yet comprehend, then every glowing ascent is a reminder we share this planet, but we do not control it. The lights rise, the sky swallows them, and the ocean, patient and eternal, waits for the next witness to look down and see what should not be there. And yet, even that explanation leaves a shadow of doubt.
Chapter 5: The Black Smoker's Secret. At the bottom of the ocean, where tectonic plates pull apart and the Earth's molten interior meets freezing water, there exist structures that seem almost mythological. They are called black smokers, towering chimneys of mineral deposits built over millennia by superheated water erupting from the seafloor. These vents spew clouds of black, mineral-rich fluid into the surrounding ocean, creating an environment that is as hostile as it is hypnotic. The water here is acidic. The temperature can exceed 700 degrees Fahrenheit. The pressure is crushing, over 300 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. And yet, against all odds, life thrives. Colonies of tube worms, some over 6 feet long, cluster around the vents, feeding on bacteria that metabolize sulfur and other chemicals. Eyeless shrimp swarm in the superheated plumes. Crabs scuttle across the scorched rock, thriving in conditions that would instantly kill most organisms on Earth. To a biologist, black smokers are a window into the origin of life. To a geologist, they are proof of the planet's restless creative energy. But to a certain subset of researchers, those willing to entertain unconventional ideas, black smokers may be something else entirely. They may be harvesters. The idea first gained traction in the late 1980s when deep-sea research teams began deploying remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, to explore hydrothermal vent fields. These ROVs, equipped with cameras, sonar, and magnetometers, transmitted real-time data back to surface ships. And in several cases, the data included anomalies that could not be easily explained. In 1989, an ROV exploring the Endeavour hydrothermal vents off the coast of British Columbia recorded a series of electromagnetic pulses emanating from a cluster of black smokers. The pulses were rhythmic, repeating every 11 seconds for over an hour. The pattern was too regular to be random, yet there was no known geological process that could produce such a signal. The research team, puzzled, ran diagnostics on the ROV. Everything checked out. The signal was real, and it was coming from the vent field itself. One team member later speculated in an unpublished paper that the signal might be the result of an unknown interaction between superheated fluid and mineral deposits, possibly creating an electromagnetic oscillator. But the paper also included a footnote, handwritten, not typed, that read, "or something else, something placed." The paper was never submitted for peer review. In the years since, other research missions have encountered similar phenomena: magnetic anomalies near vent fields, electromagnetic pulses with no apparent source, and in one particularly strange case, a visual sighting that defied all explanation. In 2004, a French research vessel exploring the mid-Atlantic ridge deployed an ROV to investigate a newly discovered vent field. As the ROV descended, its cameras captured the expected scenes: towering smoker chimneys, swirling clouds of black fluid, clusters of alien-looking life. But then, at a depth of 2,800 meters, the ROV's lights illuminated something else. A structure. It was geometric, smooth, reflective, roughly cylindrical, approximately 10 meters in length, partially embedded in the seafloor near a cluster of active vents. The ROV maneuvered closer, and the cameras recorded what appeared to be seams, deliberate joints, as if the object were constructed, not formed by natural processes. The research team watched, in stunned silence, as the ROV circled the structure. Then, without warning, the object emitted a pulse of light, bright, white, blinding, and the ROV's systems flickered. When the cameras recovered, the object was gone. Not buried, not collapsed, simply gone. The footage was reviewed, re-reviewed, analyzed frame by frame, and the conclusion, never officially published, was that the object had been real. It had been there, and then it had not. The incident was classified under the auspices of equipment malfunction, and the ROV's camera system was blamed for a digital artifact. But the team members, speaking privately, told a different story. They had seen something that should not have been there. Could black smokers, with their abundance of energy and chemical richness, be attracting attention from beyond our world? Could these deep-sea vents, isolated and inaccessible, serve as resource extraction points for intelligences capable of operating in the most extreme environments on Earth? The hypothesis is speculative, but consider the facts. Black smokers produce hydrogen, methane, and a range of rare minerals, resources that would be invaluable to any advanced civilization. The vents are located in some of the most remote, least monitored regions of the planet. And the conditions there, high heat, high pressure, darkness, are conditions that would effectively conceal any industrial activity from human observation. If you were an extraterrestrial intelligence seeking to harvest resources from Earth, you would not go to the continents, where satellites and sensors monitor every movement. You would not go to the shallow seas, where fishing fleets and research vessels patrol constantly. You would go to the deep. You would go to the places where humans cannot easily follow. You would go to the black smokers. And perhaps in the superheated darkness, in the swirling plumes of mineral-rich water, you would find exactly what you were looking for: energy, raw materials, and absolute secrecy. The electromagnetic anomalies continue, the strange sightings persist, and the black smokers, ancient and indifferent, continue their work, building, erupting, creating, unaware perhaps that they have become the focus of a mystery that reaches far beyond geology. Or perhaps they are aware. Perhaps they are not merely natural features, but markers, beacons, places where the boundary between Earth and elsewhere grows thin. The research continues. New vent fields are discovered every year, and with each discovery, the possibility grows that we are not alone in the deep, that something else is down there, working quietly, methodically, harvesting the planet's secrets while we watch from a distance, unable to reach, unable to confirm, unable to do anything but wonder. The black smokers breathe their toxic clouds. The bacteria feast. The tube worms sway in the currents. And somewhere, hidden in the darkness, the secret remains, waiting for the moment when we are ready to see it. Across the world, the mystery deepened.
Chapter 6. The Theories of Hidden Harvesters. Let us, for a moment, step beyond the evidence and into the realm of speculation. Let us ask the question that hovers, unspoken, behind every sonar anomaly, every glowing light, every electromagnetic pulse. What if they are here? Not visitors passing through, not explorers making brief contact, but harvesters, beings from elsewhere,
who have come to Earth not for us, but for what the planet offers. What would they want? The most obvious answer is water. Our planet is rare, perhaps unique, in the abundance of liquid water it possesses. Water is the foundation of chemistry, the medium in which complex reactions occur, the substance that makes life, as we understand it, possible. And if water is valuable, then Earth's oceans are a treasure trove beyond measure. But there are other resources. Hydrogen, for example. It is the most abundant element in the universe, but in pure, easily extractable form, it is relatively rare on planetary surfaces. On Earth, hydrogen is bound up in water molecules. But if you possess the technology to separate hydrogen from oxygen, a process we ourselves can perform with electrolysis, then the ocean becomes an infinite hydrogen reservoir. Hydrogen is the fuel of stars. It is the key to fusion power. For any civilization capable of interstellar travel, hydrogen would be invaluable. And the ocean, teeming with hydrogen-rich water, would be the perfect harvesting ground. Then there are the rare earth elements. Scattered across the ocean floor, concentrated in hydrothermal vent deposits, are minerals that are essential to advanced technology. Cobalt, manganese, rare isotopes of metals that are vanishingly scarce on land. We have only recently begun to consider deep-sea mining as a viable industry. But what if someone else reached that conclusion decades or centuries ago? The theory of hidden harvesters rests on a simple premise: that Earth, rich in resources and largely unmonitored, has become a mining site for intelligences capable of operating in secrecy. These beings would not announce themselves. They would not seek contact. They would simply work quietly, efficiently, invisibly, extracting what they need and leaving little trace. It sounds far-fetched, but consider the following. We know that unidentified submerged objects have been reported for decades, often in regions rich in geothermal or mineral resources. We know that electromagnetic anomalies cluster around deep-sea vents, where energy and rare elements are abundant. We know that glowing objects have been seen rising from the ocean, suggesting a capability to move between water and air, a technology that would be essential for resource transport. And we know that despite our best efforts, we have explored less than 5% of the ocean floor. 5%. The rest is terra incognita, unknown, unmapped, and for all intents and purposes, invisible to us. If you wanted to hide an industrial operation, the ocean is where you would do it. But there are objections. Skeptics, and they are right to be skeptical, point out that we have no physical evidence, no wreckage, no machinery, no definitive proof that anything non-human is operating in our oceans. The sonar contacts could be biological, the electromagnetic pulses could be geological, the lights could be misidentified natural phenomena. And yet, the pattern persists. Over and over, across decades and continents, trained observers report the same things. Objects that move with impossible speed, lights that rise from the deep, energy signatures that defy conventional explanation. Either the ocean is far stranger than we imagine, filled with unknown species, undiscovered geological processes and phenomena that happen to mimic artificial technology. Or something else is down there. Something that operates with precision, purpose, and an understanding of Earth's resources that surpasses our own. There is a third possibility, one that blends the natural and the artificial. What if the phenomenon is neither purely geological nor purely technological, but something in between? What if there exist life forms or intelligences that do not build machines in the way we do, but instead manipulate natural systems directly? Organisms or entities that can harness geothermal energy, direct magnetic fields, and move through water with capabilities that blur the line between biology and engineering. It is a humbling thought that we, with our submarines and sonar and scientific instruments, are merely children peering into a world we do not yet comprehend. That the ocean, vast and patient, holds forms of intelligence that have no need to reveal themselves to us. And if these intelligences are harvesting the ocean's resources, what does that mean for us? Are we being affected? Are the ecosystems we depend on being altered in ways we cannot yet detect? There is no evidence of harm. Fish populations, while declining due to overfishing and climate change, show no signs of unexplained losses linked to deep-sea activity. Hydrothermal vent ecosystems remain stable. The ocean continues to function as it always has. But the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. If a civilization far more advanced than ours is operating in the deep, they would likely do so with minimal impact, taking only what they need, leaving no obvious scars, operating on time scales and in locations where human monitoring is non-existent. We would never know, unless, of course, they wanted us to know. And perhaps that is the most unsettling thought of all, that the lights, the sonar contacts, the electromagnetic pulses, all of it is deliberate, a message, a signal, a way of saying, we are here, we have always been here, and we are watching. Or perhaps it is the opposite. Perhaps they are not watching us at all. Perhaps we are irrelevant to them, our presence on the surface of the planet no more significant than the tube worms clustered around a black smoker. Perhaps they see us as we see those worms. Interesting, perhaps, but ultimately inconsequential. The theory of hidden harvesters is not science, not yet. It is a framework, a way of organizing the anomalies into a coherent narrative. But it is a narrative that fits the facts as well as any other. And until we can explore the ocean with the same rigor and resources we devote to space, it will remain one possibility among many. The ocean covers 70% of the planet. We have seen 5%, and in the other 95%, in the darkness and silence and crushing pressure, the harvesters, if they exist, continue their work, unseen, unheard, unknown. But perhaps not for much longer. Years later, another case would echo the same pattern.
Chapter 7. The Whispers of Ancient Myths. Long before sonar, before submarines, before we had even named the ocean's depths, humanity told stories. Stories of gods who lived beneath the waves,
stories of creatures that rose from the sea and returned to it, bringing knowledge or taking tribute. Stories that, when examined closely, begin to sound less like fantasy and more like memory. In ancient Mesopotamia, there was Oannes, a being described as part man, part fish, who emerged from the Persian Gulf and taught the people writing, mathematics, and agriculture. According to the priest Berosus, who recorded the legend in the 3rd century BCE, Oannes would rise from the sea each morning, spend the day instructing humanity, and return to the water each night. He was not a god, the texts suggest, but a teacher, something intelligent, something other, something that came from the deep. In Polynesia, there are the tales of the Taniwha, aquatic beings that inhabit deep rivers, caves, and ocean trenches. They are described as guardians, sometimes benevolent, sometimes vengeful, but always powerful. The legends say that Taniwha can move between water and sky, that they glow with an inner light, and that they possess knowledge of the earth's hidden places. In Japan, the kappa are said to dwell in rivers and lakes, emerging at night to interact with humans. They are depicted with shells on their backs and a bowl-like depression on their heads filled with water, a detail that, to modern eyes, might suggest some form of helmet or breathing apparatus. Are these myths, or are they accounts of encounters filtered through the lens of cultures that had no framework for understanding what they saw? Consider the story of Atlantis as told by Plato, a technologically advanced civilization that existed on an island in the Atlantic which was destroyed in a single day and night by earthquakes and floods, sinking beneath the sea. Plato insisted that the story was not allegory but history, passed down from Egyptian priests who claimed it was ancient even in their time. For centuries, scholars dismissed Atlantis as fiction. But what if the story contains a kernel of truth? Not necessarily of a sunken human civilization, but of something else. Something that was beneath the sea, not sunk by catastrophe, but resident there all along. Something that interacted with early humans, left an impression, and then withdrew. The patterns are too consistent to ignore. Across cultures, across continents, separated by oceans and millennia, the stories repeat. Beings from the water, beings with advanced knowledge, beings that glow and move between sea and sky. In the Celtic traditions of Ireland and Scotland, there are the Selkies, creatures that live as seals in the ocean but can shed their skins and walk on land as humans. They are said to possess unearthly beauty and knowledge of the sea's secrets. And in some versions of the legend, they take human spouses, live among us for a time, and then return to the water, leaving behind only stories and a lingering sense of longing. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia speak of the rainbow serpent, a creator being associated with water who carved out rivers and lakes and brought life to the land. The serpent is described as enormous, luminous, and capable of moving through the earth as easily as through water. It is not malevolent, but it is powerful, a force of nature that must be respected. In the Pacific Northwest, the indigenous peoples of the tell of the Kalupilak, beings that live in the ocean and take children who wander too close to the water's edge. The descriptions vary, but many accounts describe them as humanoid, with long hair, greenish skin, and the ability to move silently through the depths. Are these cautionary tales meant to keep children safe? Or are they memories of real encounters, passed down through generations, their details distorted, but their core truth intact? And then there's the phenomenon of phantom islands, islands that appeared on maps for centuries, only to be eventually declared non-existent. Islands like High Brazil, said to lie off the coast of Ireland, visible only once every 7 years, shrouded in mist. Islands like Antillia, reported by multiple explorers in the Atlantic, described as inhabited by a mysterious, advanced people. Were these islands ever real? Or were they something else? Something that appeared and disappeared, something mobile, something that seemed like an island to sailors who had no other frame of reference. The mythological record is not proof, but it is a pattern. And patterns, as any scientist will tell you, demand explanation. Perhaps the simplest explanation is psychological. Humans, living in fear and awe of the ocean, invented stories to explain the unexplainable. Thunder becomes the wrath of gods. Tidal waves become the movement of serpents. Strange lights become the eyes of dragons. But the simplest explanation is not always the correct one, because some of these stories contain details that are oddly specific, details that align in uncanny ways with modern reports of unidentified submerged objects. The glowing lights, the ability to move between water and air, the association with energy-rich locations like volcanic islands and ocean trenches, the impression of intelligence, purpose, and technology. What if the myths are not inventions, but translations? What if our ancestors, lacking the vocabulary to describe what they saw, used the language they had, gods, monsters, spirits, to record encounters with something real? It is a question without an answer, but it is worth asking. Because if the ocean has been visited, harvested, or inhabited by non-human intelligences, then the evidence would not begin in 1947 with the birth of modern UFO research. It would begin thousands of years ago in the oldest stories we have. And those stories, when read not as fiction but as testimony, tell us something profound. That the ocean has always been a place of mystery, that the deep has always been home to something other, and that humanity, for all our progress, has always sensed, on some primal intuitive level, that we are not alone in the waters of this world. The myths whisper, the legends linger, and the ocean, eternal and inscrutable, keeps its counsel, waiting for the day when we are ready to hear what our ancestors tried to tell us. From the depths below to the silence above, the question remains.
Chapter 8. The Eyes of the Machines. We have sent our eyes into the deep, not the fragile eyes of flesh, which would be crushed by pressure and blinded by darkness, but the eyes of machines, remotely operated vehicles, equipped with cameras, sonar, magnetometers, and sensors designed to pierce the ocean's veil. These machines descend where humans cannot, probe where light does not reach, and record what they find with impassive, mechanical precision. And sometimes, what they find
is impossible. In 2016, a deep-sea research drone operated by the Ocean Exploration Trust was exploring the Mariana Trench, the deepest point on Earth. At a depth of over 10,000 meters, the drone's cameras captured footage of the seafloor, a barren, silt-covered plain punctuated by the occasional rock outcropping. The landscape was alien, desolate, and seemingly lifeless. Then the cameras detected something, a geometric pattern in the sediment. Not random, not natural. It was a series of lines, intersecting at precise angles, forming what appeared to be a grid. The lines were shallow, barely visible, but unmistakable in their regularity. The drone circled the area, capturing multiple angles. The pattern held. It was real. The research team reviewed the footage. Geologists were consulted. The consensus was puzzlement. There was no known natural process that could create such a formation. No current flows at that depth to carve patterns in the sediment. No volcanic activity to explain geometric precision. The official report described the finding as anomalous and suggested further investigation. But further investigation never came. The trench is difficult to reach, expensive to explore, and the pattern, whatever it was, did not repeat in subsequent dives. It remains unexplained. In 2018, a Norwegian research vessel exploring the Arctic Ocean deployed an autonomous underwater vehicle, AUV, to map the seafloor. The AUV, operating independently, followed a programmed route using sonar to create a detailed topographic map. But midway through the mission, the AUV deviated from its course. It turned 90 degrees and descended into a previously unmapped trench. For 3 hours, it explored the trench, recording sonar data and transmitting it back to the surface. Then, abruptly, it surfaced, earlier than scheduled, its mission incomplete. When the research team recovered the AUV and reviewed the data, they found something strange. The sonar recordings from the trench showed multiple large metallic objects resting on the seafloor. The objects were cylindrical, approximately 20 meters in length, arranged in a rough circle. The team was baffled. There were no known shipwrecks in the area, no military activity, no explanation for what the objects could be. A follow-up mission was planned, but due to funding constraints and harsh weather conditions, it was delayed. By the time a second AUV was deployed to the same location, the objects were gone. The seafloor was empty, featureless, undisturbed. The lead researcher, speaking anonymously, later said, "I don't know what we saw, but I know we saw something. And I know it wasn't there the second time." These are not isolated incidents. As more and more autonomous vehicles explore the deep, the frequency of unexplained findings increases. Strange formations, unidentified objects, energy readings that spike without warning and then vanish. The machines, indifferent to fear or skepticism, simply record what is there. In 2020, a Chinese research vessel exploring the South China Sea deployed a deep-sea camera to document the seafloor ecosystem. The camera, tethered to the ship, descended to a depth of 4,000 meters. For 2 hours, it transmitted clear footage, fish, crustaceans, sediment. Then the feed went dark. Not gradually, not with static or distortion, just black. The technicians checked the tether. It was intact. They checked the power supply. Functional. But the camera was transmitting nothing. After 30 minutes, the feed returned. The camera was still at the same depth, still pointed at the seafloor, but the view had changed. The sediment, which had been smooth, was now disturbed, as if something large had passed through the frame, and in the corner of the image, barely visible, was a faint glow. The camera was retrieved. The footage was analyzed, and the conclusion, never formally published, was that the camera had malfunctioned. Its recording buffer had overwritten itself, creating the appearance of missing time. But the crew, who watched the feed in real time, told a different story. They said the glow had moved. They said it had approached the camera, circled it, and then retreated into the darkness. They said off the record that something had been watching them. The eyes of the machines see without bias. They do not imagine, they do not embellish. They record light, sound, magnetic fields, and temperature with absolute fidelity. And yet, the data they return is often more unsettling than any human testimony. Because machines do not lie, they do not misinterpret. If a sensor detects an electromagnetic pulse, the pulse was there. If a camera records a shape, the shape existed. The question is not whether the phenomena are real, but what they are. In 2021, the Deep Sea Research Initiative 5 Deeps Expedition completed dives to the deepest points in all 5 oceans. The team, led by explorer Victor Vescovo, descended in a specially designed submersible to depths that had never been reached before. And in nearly every dive, the sensors detected anomalies. Unexplained sonar contacts, magnetic field variations, temperature spikes in areas where the seafloor should be uniformly cold. The anomalies were brief, often lasting only a few seconds, but they were consistent, appearing in multiple locations, in different oceans, at different times. Vescovo, in interviews, has been cautiously open about the findings. He does not claim to have seen evidence of extraterrestrial activity, but he does acknowledge that the deep ocean is far stranger than most people realize. He said, "We assume we know what's down there, but we don't. Not really. And every time we go down, we find something we didn't expect." The machines continue to descend. New vehicles are deployed every year, each more advanced than the last. Cameras with higher resolution, sonar with greater range, sensors capable of detecting faint chemical traces and minute electromagnetic shifts. And with each mission, the ocean reveals a little more of its vastness, a little more of its mystery, and occasionally, a little more of something that does not fit, something that should not be there, but is. We trust the machines because they have no reason to deceive. They do not seek fame or validation. They simply observe. And their observations, cold and clinical as they are, paint a picture of an ocean that is not empty, not silent, not merely a geological expanse, but alive in some strange way, alive with movement, with energy, with presence. The eyes of the machines watch. The cameras roll. The sensors hum, and in the footage, in the data, in the fleeting glimpses of something we cannot explain, the ocean speaks. Not in words, but in patterns, in anomalies, in the quiet insistence that there is more here than we have yet understood. And perhaps, just perhaps, the machines see what we have always suspected but never dared to admit, that we are not alone, not on this planet, not in the waters that cover it, and not in the deep, where the eyes of flesh cannot reach, but the eyes of machines can.
Chapter 9. The Skeptic's Reflection. Let us pause. Let us step back from the lights and the sonar contacts, from the myths and the machines, and ask a different question. What if all of this is nothing? What if the ocean, for all its mystery, is exactly what mainstream science says it is, a complex but entirely natural system, operating according to physical laws we have mostly figured out? What if the anomalies are just that? Anomalies, statistical outliers, measurement errors, the result of equipment pushed to its limits in environments hostile to technology. Sonar contacts that move impossibly fast? Perhaps they are schools of fish, their reflections amplified by thermoclines, layers of water with different temperatures that can bend and distort sound waves. The fast movers might not be moving at all. They might be stationary objects that appear to move because the sonar operator is unfamiliar with deep ocean acoustics. Glowing lights rising from the depths? Bioluminescence. The ocean is full of creatures that produce light. Jellyfish, squid, entire colonies of glowing plankton that can create the illusion of structured moving objects when seen from a distance or through distorted optics. Electromagnetic pulses near hydrothermal vents? Geology, magma movement, the interaction of superheated water with mineral-rich rock, creating brief but intense magnetic fluctuations. Nothing mysterious, nothing artificial, just the Earth doing what it has done for billions of years. These are not unreasonable explanations. In fact, they are the explanations that most scientists accept, and they have the weight of established knowledge behind them. Occam's razor suggests that we should prefer the simplest explanation, the one that requires the fewest assumptions. And the simplest explanation is that the ocean, while strange and poorly understood, is not hiding extraterrestrial harvesters. It is hiding only itself. But simplicity is not the same as truth. Consider the sonar contacts. Yes, fish can create sonar returns, but trained sonar operators, people who have spent decades distinguishing biological from mechanical, consistently report contacts that behave unlike any known marine life. They report objects that accelerate instantly, that turn without slowing, that descend to depths where no biological organism should survive. Are all of these mistaken? Are all of them misinterpreting their instruments? Or is it possible that the ocean contains phenomena, natural or otherwise, that our current models do not account for? Consider the lights. Yes, bioluminescence exists, but bioluminescent organisms do not break the surface and accelerate into the sky. They do not move in coordinated formations. They do not emit light of sufficient intensity to be seen from ships kilometers away. Are all the witnesses wrong? Are they confusing jellyfish with structured ascending craft? Or is it possible that some lights in the ocean are not biological, but something else? Consider the electromagnetic pulses. Yes, geological processes create magnetic fields, but the pulses reported near vent fields are often rhythmic, repeating at regular intervals. Geological processes do not exhibit rhythm. They exhibit chaos, variation, the irregular pulse of a planet in flux. Are all the sensors malfunctioning? Are all the readings artifacts?
Or is it possible that something, somewhere, is interacting with the ocean's energy in ways we have not yet recognized? The skeptic's role is essential. Science advances not by accepting every claim, but by rigorously testing them, demanding evidence, and filtering out error. Without skepticism, we would drown in false positives, in misinterpretations, in the noise of human imagination. But skepticism can also become a barrier. When the evidence does not fit the model, there are two choices: modify the model or dismiss the evidence, and too often the latter is easier. For decades, scientists dismissed the idea of deep-sea hydrothermal vents. The ocean floor was thought to be cold, lifeless, and geologically inert. Then, in 1977, the vents were discovered, and the entire model of deep-sea biology had to be rewritten. For decades, scientists dismissed the existence of giant squid as sailors' tales. Then specimens were found, filmed, and studied. The myth became fact. The history of science is full of moments when the impossible became real, not because the universe changed, but because we did. Because we looked more carefully, because we allowed the evidence to speak, even when it contradicted our assumptions. So where does that leave us with the ocean's mysteries? The honest answer is, we don't know. We don't know if the sonar contacts are biological anomalies, equipment errors, or something else. We don't know if the lights are bioluminescence, misidentified aircraft, or evidence of submerged craft. We don't know if the electromagnetic pulses are geology or technology. We don't know because we have not looked deeply enough. We have not committed the resources, the funding, the attention required to truly explore the ocean's depths. We send robots to Mars, but we leave 95% of our own ocean unexplored. And in that gap between knowledge and mystery, skepticism and wonder must coexist. The skeptic says, "Show me proof. Give me physical evidence, wreckage, artifacts, something tangible. Until then, I will assume the phenomena are natural." The believer says, "The patterns are too consistent, the witnesses too credible, the data too strange. Something is there even if we cannot yet prove it." And perhaps the truth lies not in choosing one over the other, but in holding both perspectives simultaneously, in being skeptical enough to demand rigor, but open enough to admit that the ocean may yet surprise us. Because the ocean has always been surprising. It has always held more than we expected, more life, more diversity, more complexity, and perhaps more intelligence. The skeptic's reflection is not a dismissal, it is a reminder. A reminder that mystery should not be mistaken for evidence, that wonder should not replace inquiry, and that the most profound truths are often found not in certainty, but in the careful, patient search for understanding. So we watch, we listen, we deploy our machines and train our sensors and wait for the ocean to reveal itself, not through myth or speculation, but through data, through evidence, through the slow, unglamorous work of science. And until that evidence arrives, we live with the mystery. We live with the knowledge that the ocean is vast, that our understanding is limited, and that the question, "Are we alone?" remains unanswered. Not because we have looked and found nothing, but because we have barely begun to look. The waves continue their rhythm. The tides pull and release, and the ocean, patient and eternal, waits. But if the ocean hides secrets, then the sky might hold even more.
Chapter 10. Beneath the Final Wave. We have journeyed far into the deep, where light dies and pressure becomes a crushing weight, into history, where myths and memories blur together, into the data, where machines record what human eyes cannot see. We have asked questions that have no easy answers, and we have listened to the ocean's quiet, persistent hum. And now, as we surface, as we return to the world of air and light, we must ask one final question. What does it all mean? If the ocean is being harvested, if intelligences from beyond this world are drawing energy, extracting resources, or simply observing us from the depths, then what does that mean for humanity? Are we in danger? Are we being helped, exploited, or ignored? The truth is, we do not know. And perhaps we are not meant to know. Not yet. Because the ocean operates on time scales that dwarf human history. A single current can take 1,000 years to complete its circuit. A hydrothermal vent can erupt for millennia. And if something is working in the deep, it may be operating on time scales we cannot comprehend. Patient, methodical, and utterly indifferent to the brief flicker of human civilization. We are, after all, very young. Our species has walked this planet for perhaps 300,000 years. We have had advanced technology for less than 2 centuries. We have been capable of exploring the deep ocean for a few decades at most. If there are others here, beings with technologies that seem like magic to us, beings who have mastered the transition between water and air, beings who can draw power from the earth itself, then they have been here longer than we have, perhaps far longer, and they have had no need to announce themselves. Why would they? We are not a threat. We are barely capable of reaching the deepest parts of our own ocean. We pose no obstacle to any operation they might conduct. And if they wished to communicate with us, they would have done so. The fact that they have not suggests either that they are not here or that they have no interest in contact. But there is a third possibility. Perhaps they are waiting for us to mature, waiting for us to develop the technology, the wisdom, and the perspective required to understand what they are doing, waiting for the moment when we can meet them not as primitive, staring in awe at the incomprehensible, but as equals, or at least as beings capable of comprehension. It is a hopeful thought, and perhaps a naive one, but it offers a framework for understanding the silence, the secrecy, the absence of clear contact. Or perhaps the ocean is simply the ocean, vast, mysterious, filled with natural wonders we have yet to discover. Perhaps the lights are bioluminescence. Perhaps the sonar contacts are biology, geology, or instrumentation error. Perhaps the electromagnetic pulses are nothing more than the planet's restless energy, and we are seeing patterns where none exist. That, too, is possible. But whether the mystery is natural or artificial, whether the ocean hides secrets or simply hides itself, one thing is certain: we do not yet know. And the not knowing is in its own way a gift. Because mystery invites exploration. It invites curiosity. It pulls us forward into the unknown, into the deep, into the places where certainty dissolves and wonder takes its place. And as long as the mystery remains, as long as the ocean hums its ancient, unodal song, we have a reason to keep looking, to send our machines deeper, to ask better questions, to listen more carefully, because the ocean is not just water. It is the womb of life, the engine of climate, the cradle of mysteries we have only begun to touch. And whether those mysteries are entirely natural or touched by something else, they are worth pursuing. The waves roll, the tides pull, the currents flow in their 1,000-year cycles. And beneath it all, in the cold black water, in the silent trenches and glowing vent fields, the ocean keeps its counsel. Perhaps there are harvesters down there. Perhaps there are intelligences, ancient and patient, drawing on the planet's resources with technologies we cannot fathom. Perhaps they watch us from the depths, curious or indifferent as we scratch the surface of understanding. Or perhaps the ocean is alone. Perhaps the lights are illusions, the sonar contacts are errors, and the electromagnetic pulses are nothing more than the Earth's heartbeat, misread and misunderstood. Either way, the ocean remains, eternal, indifferent, infinite. And we, small and curious and determined, continue to ask, what is down there? Not because we expect an answer, but because we must. Because the question itself is part of what makes us human. The need to know, the need to explore, the need to stand at the edge of the unknown and whisper, "Show me." And sometimes, in the flicker of a distant light or the echo of a sonar ping, the ocean whispers back, not with words, not with certainty, but with something deeper, something older, something that says, "You are not alone, not on this planet, not in this universe, and not in the asking." The mystery remains, and perhaps that is exactly as it should be.
Thank you for drifting with us into the unknown. Thank you for listening to the stories, the data, the questions that linger between science and speculation. The ocean is vast, and our understanding is small. But every journey begins with a single step, or in this case, a single dive into the deep. If this story stirred something in you, if it made you wonder, question, or simply feel the pull of the unknown, we invite you to share your thoughts. Leave a comment. Tell us what you think. Have you seen something strange in the water? Do you believe the ocean holds secrets beyond biology and geology? Or do you think the mystery is all in our minds, a product of pattern-seeking brains trying to find meaning in randomness? There are no wrong answers, only perspectives, and every perspective adds to the larger picture. If you enjoyed this journey, consider subscribing. There are more mysteries to explore, more questions to ask, and more depths to plumb. And if you know someone who might appreciate this story, someone who looks at the ocean and wonders what lies beneath, share it with them. Let the mystery spread. Until next time, keep looking, keep questioning, keep listening to the whispers that rise from the deep and echo in the silence of the unknown. Because the ocean, vast and patient and eternal, is always there, waiting for those brave enough to ask, "What are you hiding?" And perhaps one day it will answer. Stay curious, stay humble, and remember, the greatest mysteries are not those we solve, but those we carry with us. Questions that guide us forward into the dark, into the deep, into the places where certainty ends and wonder begins. Thank you for listening. Thank you for wondering. And thank you for drifting with us into the unknown.